So I used to have a really big debate with a friend of mine when I was in like middle school, high school, and it was over Grand Theft Auto versus Saints Row. Now, I really liked Grand Theft Auto and he really liked Saints Row. And the argument we would always get into is I would say that I like Grand Theft Auto more because it's more of a realistic game versus Saints Row. And he always used to say the same thing every time. It's embedded in my brain. He would say games don't have to be realistic for them to be fun. Now, what I mean by that is that in Saints Row, you have a gun that shoots dildos, or you can whack people and kill people with dildos. And although that's wacky and quirky and what we might call unrealistic, in the world of Saints Row, the Saints Row universe, that's a completely normal, realistic thing. So I came up with a saying for these when I got older, which was games can be dumb and fun. Saints Row is a dumb but fun game. Metal Gear Solid is a dumb but fun game. Far Cry 5 is a dumb but dumb game. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story, and then I'm going to tell you about the characters that I think are relevant to the story, and then I'm going to really just kind of hit home with what I think they did wrong, or what little tiny tweaks I think would have made the game better, or at least good. And then you can kind of tell me how I'm wrong in the comments, and we go from there. So the game starts with you watching a video of this leader of a cult who is sacrificing this prisoner or torturing or whatever. Regardless, he does the whole mountain fingers into the eyes, and he pushes the guy's eyes and throws him to the side. So after that, the camera zooms out and you see that you're in a helicopter with 4 other people. One of them is a U.S. Marshal. It says Marshal on his vest, and there's 3 other police officers and you. So the officer to your right and the marshal are talking about how they should turn around and they shouldn't be here to arrest the guy, and the marshal's like, well, I got a big warrant here for his arrest, so we're going to arrest him. And then the sheriff is like, well, this is your last chance to turn around. He's like, we're landing. So he goes, dispatch, if you don't hear from us in 15 minutes, send the National Guard after us. So the helicopter lands and you get off. So after the helicopter lands, you do get off the helicopter, and this part of the game is one of the best. It really does a great job of introducing you into the atmosphere and the feeling. There's members of the cult with bats and melee weapons, and there's people yelling at you and spitting at you, and there's dogs barking. There's big burly men with guns. There's one guy who like jumps off of the bench, which is kind of silly to watch. But anyway, it's a really tough, gritty looking group of people, and you and the cops feel uneasy, and you can almost feel the anxiety in this scene. And then everybody kind of gets closer to the church, and as you approach the church, you hear music and singing, and you're like, ah, shoot, here it is. So you push the church door open, and there you see the 4 leaders of the cult with a couple of cult members, and the main guy, Joseph, who everybody calls Father, is standing in the middle of the pew, and he's praying and he's saying things, and he's saying how he saw this coming and he knew this was all going to happen. So then he places his arms in front of you like this, and that's the very first button you can hit in the game, and it prompts you to arrest him, and that's so then you get on the helicopter, and these cult members go berserk. They literally are jumping onto the helicopter as you fly away. The marshal shoots one guy in the head. You push one guy off, and then a suicide guy literally climbs on the front of the helicopter and jumps into the propeller, and it sends it flying and spinning, and you crash. Oh shit, we going down. We going down. Yo, what up? Now, after the helicopter crashes, you wake up, and Joseph has already left, but everyone else is kind of stuck in there. So Joseph comes into the helicopter, and he grabs the microphone to speak to the dispatch, and he's like, we're all set. Don't send reinforcements. And the dispatch lady is like, all praise to you, Father. And it was like, boom, this guy's not just crazy here, he's crazy everywhere. So then Joseph tells his cult to kill all you guys, but because you're the main character in the game and it's only been about 7 minutes, you get out of your seatbelt in time and you run away and you run into the forest. And this is really kind of the first time that you're kind of in control of your character, where you're allowed to kind of do whatever you want, so to speak. You still have to run away from the people shooting you, but it shows you how to get a melee weapon. You have your first fight with a person, and when you knock out this person or kill him, you get a radio, and the marshal, who escaped as well, is on the radio, and he tells you to go meet him at this house. So you meet him at this house, and the bad guys are there, so you kind of kill them all, and then you get into a truck and you leave to run away. Now, as you're driving away, they're sending everything after you. ATVs, cars, roadblocks, rockets, grenades, everything is just being launched at you. But you keep evading everything and you're almost home free. You just have to get across this bridge. So as you're driving across the bridge, you get ran off the road and you crash and go into the lake. So after you've been knocked out for the second time in a half hour, you wake up on the shore and you see the U.S. Marshal being captured, and he says, "I'm a U.S. Marshal." And they're like, "We don't care about that." Smack. And then you're like, "Oh crap, where's my turn?" And you look over and this old man comes up to you and just picks you up, boom, throws you over his shoulder, and you're knocked out for the third time. So you finally come to in this man's like bunker, and you're chained to his bed or a bed, and he wakes up and he's like, "My name's Dutch. I should have turned you in. I think I'm just going to bring you to the cult. Never mind. I did a 180 in 3 seconds. I'm going to help, and you're going to help me destroy this cult." And at this point, this is the first character you meet who you're kind of like, well, this is kind of weird. Like, he just did a 180 on his entire dialogue while you said absolutely nothing, which is a big problem with this game. But anyway, he lets you go, and he's kind of like your first home base fella. Like, he tells you who the bad guys are, and this is where you first get to find out who all 4 of the people were at the pew, not just the father. So like I said, there's 4 bad guys, but you really only fight and play against 3 of them. So there's John the Baptist, who he's kind of in charge of baptizing you and kind of making you repent your sins, and he's kind of sadistic. He likes to tattoo the sins on you and then cuts them off, and that's kind of how you like get free of your sins. But so he's kind of in charge of that. Then there's Faith, who's really in charge of like the slave work, manual labor work, which is involved in this drug that we'll talk about a little bit later. And then there's Jacob, who is in charge of the military and the revolting and the forces and the guns and all that other shit. So the whole game, the premise is those people who were in the helicopter with you, coincidentally, each one of them got captured by each one of those 3, and you have to go get enough resistance points, really just do missions until that person is like, "Yeah, okay, let's fight." And really from that point on, you do a couple missions for Dutch on his island, which is really just kind of showing you the basics of resistance building, which if you've played Far Cry at all, it's the same Far Cry formula. You got bases, you got civilians to help, you got outposts to overtake, and each time you do those, you gain XP and rewards and resistance points in this game, and it just kind of progresses the story. Now, I decided to go after John, who I think I really only did it because he was like the first guy who you can go after outside of Dutch's island, because the first mission that gets you off of his little bunker area is to go help this town that's under attack. So right after you're done helping Dutch, he tells you that there's people who need help at a town across the way, so you have to go help these people at a town. When you get to the town and they're already under attack, there's airplanes flying everywhere, there's guns, explosions, everything's going crazy. So you just kind of get your gun out and you shoot them all, and you're like bah, 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 and you get up on the turret and you shoot down the airplane, and it's crazy. And then once everything's cleared away, you meet 2 people in the game. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, to save both of us time, I'm not going to go look up everyone's name in this video. So hopefully, if it all goes well, when I'm talking about someone, I will put them on the screen. So you meet 2 people from this town who kind of both give you main quests along the way. So you meet this girl, right up there, who's like the gritty, tough bar owner, and she's like, "My pappy will be proud of you," and you know, that person. And then you meet this guy, this Walking Dead Gabriel knockoff guy, who's a priest who wears his vest and he's got his Bible with him at all times. Now, this guy here is one of the saving graces of this game. He's one of the ever since I completed the game, this character, and one thing in particular that he does throughout this game, was really the only thing I could think of in this area that I'm like, this is kind of cool. So after you save the town, both those characters give you main story quests, and once you get through a couple of them and you get like halfway through resistance points, it does what I think is probably the most annoying, and it takes me completely out of the video game and makes me realize that, oh yeah, I'm playing a video game thing, and that is these stupid capture parties that come after you. Now, the game doesn't know how to do dialogue between you and the leaders of each section of the cult. So what they've decided to do was send these capture parties after you, which are literally people who do not stop coming after you. I tried for like a good 15 minutes. They will never stop coming after you. And all it takes is one bullet from them and you get knocked out. And this is to set up cutscenes and dialogues between the main leaders of the cult and you. One of the main reasons I can think of as to why they do it this way instead of literally any other way is because your character does not have a voice, but we'll talk about that later because that's for a later part of this video. Now with John, when you get knocked out for the first time, it's pretty cool and you're like, whoa, what's happening here? Because you wake up in a van, like you're in transport with this girl and this guy who's the soldier or whatever, and she's like, hey, F you, and he's like, bam, hits her with the gun, and she gets knocked out or knocked down, and then you hear like gunfire and explosions and the van crashes and it goes upside down. Now, this whole time, this guy, can we call him Gabriel? That just works better for me. So Gabriel, you hear him praying and he's like, thou shalt not kill, or whatever the hell he says. But anyway, he opens up the van and shoots the guard who's in there with you. And then he opens up his Bible and you see that he's got like a little cut in the Bible for the gun. So he puts the gun back in the Bible and he closes it and he holds the Bible. So that Bible that you thought he was holding like a good priest fella, it's got a gun in it. So much like Far Cry, once you get enough resistance points or XP or whatever, the final boss in that section is like, it's time for us to fight. So when you get to John, he's like, it's time for us to meet at the church. So you get to the church door and you open it up and boom, you get knocked out right away. So you come to and you can see that John is tattooing on you, but you don't know what he's tattooing. He tells you he tattooed the word Wraith on you, but you never see it. You never have any idea if it's there, but you do see someone else next to you. This is a pilot guy, doesn't really involve anything with him. You did a couple quests on him. He just kind of taught you how to fly a plane. But anyway, he's there and John is trying to force Gabriel to give this guy I don't know what you call it, but like place your hand on the Bible and repeat after me. And he tells the guy to put his hand on it and repeat after him, and he doesn't do it. So then he knocks him to the ground and he cuts off the chest thing where he tattooed the word on him. And right before this happens, Gabriel is like, I'm not gonna do this. So one of his bodyguards knocks him on the ground and he falls down on the ground, right? And then he gets picked back up. Now, I didn't notice this in my first playthrough, but if you look, this is the coolest scene in the entire game, because when he got knocked down onto the ground, he threw away the cult's Bible and he grabbed his Bible. Now we both know what's inside his Bible, don't we? We talked about it earlier, unless I cut that part out. So he's trying to look at you and make that connection. He's like, put your hand on the Bible. So then he's like, just say yes. So which is kind of like John's whole slogan thing. Is a weird slogan. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, you go to put your hand. Gabriel flips it open and you grab the gun and you point it at John and boom, you hit him in the ear and he escapes. And I'll tell you what happens now. Why? Because this is a review of a game that annoyed me so much I felt the need to make this review. John gets in his airplane, and then the final part of this boss fight is in an airplane, and all you're doing is dogfighting him for 30 seconds, and then you shoot him. But that's not even the worst part. The thing that this game does with every single boss is you fight him in an airplane, you do enough damage for the airplane to crash, and then it peacefully lands. He gets out of the airplane, and then there's the cutscene where he dies. I promise you we're almost to the point where I'm just going to start talking about the negative things. But this part was so frustrating to me that it's like we just fought in a church and then outside, and then the end of the boss battle is you in an airplane, and then that's not even the final scene. Like you land it and get out and die. Like it was so all over the place for me and it was really weird. I honestly would have felt better if that cutscene you do get to shoot him and then there was just like a giant standoff with the guards in that scene. But anyway, that's the end of your whole part of the game against John. Now, if I just described anything to you that sounded remotely cool or exciting, don't worry, because the rest of the game sucks. And that's really just the Far Cry formula, right? Like you do the same thing there in the next couple sections. And sure, there's a couple differences. Like I said, Faith has this drug called bliss, which is really what's corrupting everyone's brain. And it really just makes you feel like you're excited and happy and everything. And it's kind of cool. And then Jacob is just this like military hoorah guy who is almost as annoying as Faith, but that's pretty much the game. You do the same style of quests in each section, section with just the backdrop looking different, and then you fight the boss and it's the end of the game. Now, I'm not going to talk about the cutscenes with Faith or Jacob, at least all of them in order, because there's nothing much to tell. Once you've done John's part, you've done the whole game. But there are a few things that I really wish they did differently with Faith and Jacob that I think would have made the game so much better. So let's start by talking about Faith. Now, the whole game, you're always told that Faith doesn't have a last name. You don't know her last name. So you're led to believe that her last name is not Seed, that she's not a sister to the brothers. Now, I have done some research for this video and everything looks like her last name is Seed. However, in the game, it's never said. So I'm going to talk and treat this like how the game presented it, which is she's not related to them. In fact, she even says some dialogue into the game, which makes you think that she's not related to them. Faith is the typical drug guru girl of these games, where she's like not really confrontational as far as weapons. She's more of like, I can make you happy and satisfied. You just have to believe. Now, remember we talked earlier about those capture parties? Well, this is where that really starts to ramp up. I'm not joking. I think with Faith, is if you do the main story quests, I think you get knocked out like 4 or 5 times. It's definitely more than John, but it was like enough where it's like, how do I keep getting captured and not killed in this game? Because they explain that you get shot, there's a cutscene, and then you just wake up with all your guns and equipment. Like, how did that happen? So once you get enough resistance points with Faith, you get to fight her. And there's a couple things that happen here that I really think the game missed the mark on. So for starters, with them not saying Faith is their sister, I really thought that she was going to be the one to like reverse on the cult and say like, I don't want to be here. They forced me here. Like, let me help you beat them. And I was so excited for that to happen. However, so she has the ability to like essentially manipulate people. Like, they play it off as if she literally has like mind bending powers and stuff, which is kind of whatever. It's the only thing in this game that's like super. So she, remember the marshal? No, you don't. Let me refresh your memory. This guy, the guy who was in the airplane with you. Yeah. So he got captured by her and he got manipulated, but he somehow escaped, right? So he escaped and he's trying to be, helped in a hospital that you visit once or twice. In the final cutscene before you fight Faith, she shows you that she like manipulates him and makes him shoot some other guy, some old guy who like had a kid who joined the cult or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But the main part I'm telling you about this part of the game is that after she makes the marshal shoot a side character, she makes him point the gun at his head and shoot himself. Because again, up until this point, you've never seen her like do anything violently. Like, she's just kind of had like the slaves in line and she just kind of makes everyone do her bidding, which I understand, but I thought they were doing that in the game so she could have at least a somewhat clean conscience to do a 180 and help. But after you see her literally get this guy to kill himself, you're like, oh, this is not how this game's gonna go. So anyway, after you see that cutscene and that happens, you finally fight her, and you fight her in this like magical pit thing where like she keeps spawning these angels, what they call these like drugged out slaves to fight you, and then you finally shoot her. But she says one line in this game that this part of dialogue has stuck with me since I stopped playing the game.
Supplied me with drugs. He threatened me. I was 17. I was just a child.
I was only 17. I was just a child. Now, what that means to me is that she was forced to be here, and that line of dialogue would have been so good for her to do a 180 and join your side, for you to save her. You already have a cure for the drug, so if she's like addicted for it, then you can give her the cure. And they were like setting it up, but then nope, you shoot her and you kill her and she walks into a river and just dies. Now, at this part of the game, you still have to go fight Jacob, but I was so annoyed about the repetition of this game and so frustrated with how they didn't use Faith in a much better, easier way that I was like, okay, let's just finish this game so I can make this review and talk about that. But Jacob's section is almost the worst part of the game completely. I mean, by itself, because those little knockout parties where they knock you out and you have cutscenes and dialogue, you do with Jacob probably 7 or 8 of them. At least it feels like it. And they're not different. It's the same thing. Now, his whole thing is about brainwashing you and being like, you will be a gun for us. You will work for us. The weak die. And so you just do the same cutscene. It's like this little training simulator thing over and over and over. And it's so frustrating that come the final 5 times you have to do it, you're just grabbing random guns and doing it for fun. It's so frustrating. Now, really just 2 things I want to talk about with Jacob's section, and then we'll get to the end of the game. His section does a really good job of making you feel like woodsy. I don't know how to describe it. The whole map is like Montana, USA, so like it's outdoorsy woods and stuff like that. But Jacob's section really has a lot of terrain, and it makes you feel like you're really kind of out in the wildlands. And I thought that was kind of unique, at least refreshing from Faith and John section, which kind of was just the same. Now, my final straw in this game, and the reason that I was finally like, no, just admit this game sucks, was a cutscene that you have with Jacob and Joseph at the same time. So you get knocked out and you get sent to Jacob's prison. The worst part about this game is that you have a cutscene with Joseph, right? The father, the main bad guy of the game. And he tells you essentially kind of like his backstory of how he had a wife who got pregnant and he was scared, but she was positive about it. She was happy, and then got in a car crash and the mother died, but the daughter lived. And then he killed his daughter in the hospital.
I took my fingers and I put them on that little plastic tube that was taped to her angelic face, and I pinched it shut. And after a little while, her legs began to kick in and kick. And then nothing. Stillness.
Like, try to keep your main bad guy grounded in the ways of what he does. But for him to then just admit to child murdering his own child, I was like, this is just so stupid. So I really just kind of kicked back and trying to force my way through the end of this game. So keep in mind, you're still fighting Jacob at this point. So you still finish the missions and then you fight him, which is kind of a cool thing. His whole gimmick is that he's got this music box that like controls your brain kind of thing. I don't really know. It was kind of boring. The same thing that Faith does with drugs, he does with music. But anyway, the final boss scene, he's up top on a hill. You kill a bunch of people and run up to the hill and you shoot him. And the cutscene for him dying, when you run all the way to the top of the hill and you kill him, the cutscene for him dying is at the bottom of the hill.
For everyone. You die now, or you die later. It's up to you. But either way, you won't die a hero.
Well, my brother saw all this coming. I don't know if he talks to God.
Like, why not just have the cutscene at the top or have him at the bottom or have him fall? But he's up there, you kill him, and then the cutscene jumps to the bottom of the mountain. I hate that so much. You kill Jacob, like 3 seconds later, you get a cutscene with Joseph crying, and then he's like, it's time for us to meet where it all began, at that church at the beginning of the game. So you get in a helicopter or a speedboat, or you just fast travel, and you go there. So you show up to the church, and he gives you this cult speech of like, we're just doing something good, you don't understand, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, he gives you 2 options. He says, you can leave now and I will not chase you or pursue you and everything will be forgotten. Or you can try to arrest me and we'll see what happens. And of course, at this point, I was like, well, this guy just admitted to killing his daughter and he's done all these atrocities. Like, this is so stupid. And I don't care what happens to my character. So let's just arrest him. So you arrest him and then do this terrible final boss. Okay, let me describe to you the final boss of this video. He has your friends hypnotized. So what you have to do is shoot your friends and then pick them up and then do that like 12 times and then shoot him and then that's it. It is just, it was so disappointing and underwhelming beyond belief. Oh yeah, one other thing I forgot. So Joseph also decides to drop nukes on the world, at least Montana. So you have to escape to Dutch's bunker. Remember that old guy who helped you out from the beginning of the game? Yeah, I never went back to his island, by the way, after that first part. I don't know if you're supposed to or if you did. I think he does have more quests, but I said fuck it and I just left. Anyway, you're driving back to his island with Joseph in the truck with you, and right before you get to his bunker, you crash. When you come to, you see Joseph carrying you. Again, this guy never gets knocked out when everyone else does, but whatever. So he's carrying you into Dutch's bunker. So you black out again and then wake up in Dutch's bunker, and you see that he killed Dutch right next to you, and you're chained up to the bed that you started the game with, and he's like, this is our new world. We will rise together and we will create a new world, you and me together. And you're like, what the fuck? And then the game just ends. That's it. That's Far Cry 5, and it really sucked. And now I just want to talk about some things that didn't go with what I was talking about at the time, but I still think need to be addressed. Number one, the alternate ending. If you do resist, you just leave and then say you're going to bring the National Guard back, but you still just leave and the game ends. So there's really no satisfying ending. Number two, the next game in the Far Cry series is called Far Cry New Dawn, which is a continuation of this game. But if you're like me, I did not know that. So when the game ended like this, you were like, what a waste of time. But I'm not going to play New Dawn, so I guess it's a continuation of the story. But I can't play another game like this, because that leads me to point three. And point three, the above everything worst part of this game for me is that your character has zero dialogue. Because your character never talks and you don't know who you're playing, you develop zero connections to anyone you meet in the game. I did not care about anyone. When the marshal shot himself, I cared more about the fact that Faith was not going to turn on the cult than I did the fact that that character, who I think I was supposed to care about, died. There are plenty of side characters who you meet along the way who die, and you do not care about them because you are given no expression, no communication, no anything. You're just a blank screen with a gun going through this story like you're supposed to care. Now, just think of that for a second, right? Think of any other game in the Far Cry series that has friends being captured and you have to go rescue them, but your character has a voice and develops a great connection with a ton of side characters and makes you want to play this game even decade later when you have a million other games that have come out, but you still go back to that game because it's more fun than any other game in the series that you've played so far. I'm trying to think, is there any game like that? Nope. In the entire time, that's actually what I thought. I thought this was just a shittier version of Far Cry 3. And it really is. The difference is in Far Cry 3, you're so invested in your character because you're not playing yourself in a video game. You are playing the actions of a character in that video game. You are doing the actions of someone in that world who people know. So my overall thought on this game is that it was so close to being a okay game, and from there, with a couple more tweaks, they could have turned this game into a really genuine good Far Cry game. Unfortunately, with the mistakes of never giving your character a voice, not having a single member of the cult turn their back on them, and just you not caring about anyone in this game, it was an unfun, disappointing, dumb, not fun game, and I will not be revisiting it. All right, plug time. Okay, so I am now currently playing Far Cry 6. It's a pretty fun game. I'm enjoying it so far, although I'm only a few hours into it. I will be playing that all the way through and then reviewing that. So if you like these series and this video does okay and that video does okay, I will then go back to Far Cry 1 and I will do reviews for the entire Far Cry series. If not, we're gonna play a different game and do another review. So that's it. If you want to watch this whole thing, I'm streaming most of the gameplay on my Twitch. I do some off stream, but most of it's on Twitch. Social media, everything is Scary Harry 22. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. Let me know how I did on the video itself. If you like it, some things you want to see different, some things you agree with, disagree with, let me know. And I'll try to improve better content for you, but you guys got to give me the proper feedback. All right. So thank you. Bye.